What happens when humanity's greatest discovery becomes its deadliest threat? You won't believe how one man's choice in the depths of an alien dungeon changed everything. Forever. The crimson skies of Xeros stretched endlessly above as James stepped off the landing platform, his boots crunching against the crystalline surface that seemed to pulse faintly with each heartbeat. Behind him, the expedition vessel stood like a sentinel from Earth, its sleek metallic hull reflecting the eerie glow of dual suns. What began as a routine mission to establish a colony had spiraled into something far more complex when scans revealed structures buried deep beneath the planet's crust. Structures that shouldn't exist on an uninhabited world. As he adjusted his helmet visor, James couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It wasn't paranoia. It was instinct honed over years of exploring uncharted territories. The airlock doors hissed shut behind him, sealing away the safety of the ship and plunging him deeper into uncertainty. James paused for a moment, taking in the alien landscape. The ground beneath his feet shimmered faintly, as though alive with some kind of energy. Strange, twisted plants grew sporadically, their leaves glowing faintly in hues of green and purple. Above, the twin suns cast long shadows that danced unnaturally across the terrain, creating an almost hypnotic effect. He activated his wrist console, bringing up a holographic map of the area. The scan data showed anomalies, massive underground chambers that defied explanation. It was as if the planet itself had been engineered, its natural features deliberately altered to conceal something of immense importance. As James began his descent toward the first excavation site, the wind picked up, carrying with it a low, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the very ground. He glanced around, but there was no sign of movement. Still, the sensation of being observed persisted, growing stronger with each step. His mind raced with possibilities. Could this planet have once hosted intelligent life? So, what had happened to them? And why did these ruins feel so aware? We only just scratched the surface here, but trust me, the stakes are about to get much higher. Stay tuned because you won't want to miss what happens next. The first descent into the underground labyrinth was anything but ordinary. Guided by flickering holomaps projected onto his wrist console, James navigated narrow tunnels lined with glowing mineral deposits that cast otherworldly shadows. Each step echoed unnaturally loud, as though the walls themselves were alive and listening. Then came the discovery. A massive chamber filled with towering obelisks etched in symbols no human database could decipher. But it wasn't the markings that froze James in place. It was the faint hum resonating through the room, vibrating through his bones like a warning. Something down here wasn't dead. It was merely waiting. Waiting for what? For whom? James approached one of the obelisks cautiously, his gloved hand hovering inches above its surface. The material felt warm to the touch, almost organic, and he could see faint pulses of light traveling along its length. The symbols carved into the stone shifted ever so slightly, as if reacting to his presence. He activated his scanner, attempting to record the patterns, but the device emitted a high-pitched whine before shutting down completely. Frowning, James tapped the side of the scanner, but it remained unresponsive. Whatever energy powered these structures interfered with modern technology. As he continued his exploration, the hum grew louder, reverberating through the chamber and making his ears ring. James clenched his jaw, willing himself to focus. The air grew heavier, pressing down on him like an invisible weight. Despite the discomfort, he pressed onward, driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and primal fear. The deeper he ventured, the more elaborate the carvings became. Scenes of celestial bodies, intricate machinery, and humanoid figures adorned the walls, telling a story he couldn't yet fully understand. This is where things start escalating quickly. We're right at the edge of something monumental happening, and I promise you, you do not want to look away now. Hours turned to days as James delved further into the depths of Xeros' hidden dungeons. His team back at base grew increasingly uneasy, their communications laced with static and fragmented messages. "James, we're picking up energy spikes," crackled Commander Alera's voice over the comms. "Whatever you're doing down there, it's affecting our systems." He didn't respond immediately, too focused on deciphering the patterns carved into the walls. They weren't random, they told a story, one of a civilization that had mastered both technology and biology, fusing them into something unimaginable. Yet every revelation brought new questions. Why had they vanished? And why did these ruins feel so aware? James paused to examine a particularly intricate mural. It depicted what appeared to be a ritual, with humanoid figures surrounding a central object that glowed with an unearthly light. The expressions on their faces ranged from reverence to terror, suggesting that whatever they were interacting with held immense power and danger. He snapped several photos, hoping the xenolinguists back at base might make sense of the imagery. As he moved deeper into the dungeon, the environment shifted dramatically. The air grew colder, and the walls transitioned from smooth stone to jagged crystalline formations. These crystals pulsed rhythmically, casting flickering light across the corridor. The hum that had accompanied him since entering the labyrinth now took on a distinct pattern, almost like a language. James activated his suit's audio recorder, capturing the sound for analysis. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap, yet the allure of uncovering the truth kept him moving forward. His thoughts drifted to the team waiting above. They relied on him to bring back answers, but what if those answers came at a cost? What if unlocking the secrets of this ancient civilization meant unleashing forces humanity wasn't prepared to face? The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, but there was no turning back now. A sudden tremor nearly sent James sprawling to the ground. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the hum intensified, growing louder until it became almost unbearable. Through gritted teeth, he activated his suit's dampeners, trying to block out the noise. That's when he saw it, a faint outline emerging from the darkness ahead. At first glance, it looked like another structure, but as he approached cautiously, the shape shifted, morphing into something organic yet mechanical. Tentacles of light extended outward, probing the air around him. Was this some kind of guardian? Or something far worse? His instincts screamed at him to retreat, but curiosity rooted him to the spot. The entity, if that's what it could be called, pulsated with an otherworldly energy. Its form was constantly shifting, defying any attempt to categorize it. James raised his scanner again, but the device shorted out instantly, sparks flying from its casing. He cursed under his breath, realizing how vulnerable he was without functioning equipment. The entity seemed to pause, its tendrils retreating slightly before extending again, this time closer to him. Despite his fear, James forced himself to remain calm. He raised his hands slowly, palms open in a gesture of peace. The entity responded by emitting a series of rhythmic pulses, each one resonating through the chamber. It was communicating not in words, but in frequencies and vibrations. James closed his eyes, focusing on the sensations coursing through his body. Images began to form in his mind, vague at first but gradually becoming clearer. He saw vast cities suspended in orbit, their inhabitants living in harmony with machines. Then came flashes of destruction, explosions, chaos, entire worlds consumed by fire. When the vision faded, James found himself gasping for breath, sweat trickling down his face despite the climate-controlled suit. Whatever this thing was, it carried memories not just of its creators but of their downfall. Questions burned in his mind. Could humanity avoid the same fate? Or would colonizing Xeros repeat history? Back at base camp, tensions ran high. Reports of strange phenomena poured in from all directions. Equipment malfunctions, inexplicable power surges, even sightings of shadowy figures moving outside the perimeter. James knew better than to dismiss them outright. These events coincided perfectly with his exploration of the dungeon. During a heated debriefing session, Dr. Lyra Chan, the team xenobiologist, voiced her concerns. "You're awakening something ancient," she warned. "Something we might not be ready for." James countered, arguing that understanding this civilization could unlock unparalleled advancements for humanity. But deep down, doubt gnawed at him. Had they crossed a line they couldn't uncross? Commander Ilara paced the room, her expression grim. "We need to decide whether continuing this mission is worth the risk," she said, addressing the assembled crew. "Every hour we spend here increases the chances of something going wrong." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group, but James remained silent, lost in thought. He replayed the visions he'd experienced in the dungeon, searching for clues that might guide their next move. Later that night, James sat alone in his quarters, reviewing the data he'd collected. The symbols from the obelisks, the images transmitted by the entity, all pointed to a civilization that had reached incredible heights before collapsing catastrophically. What had caused their demise? Was it hubris, conflict, or something else entirely? And most importantly, could humanity learn from their mistakes? Determined to uncover more, James returned to the dungeon armed with enhanced detection gear. This time, he noticed subtle changes. The symbols on the walls rearranged themselves as he passed, forming new patterns. It was as if the structure responded to his presence. Venturing deeper, he stumbled upon a sealed vault. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, rippling at his touch. Against every logical impulse, he pressed his palm against it. With a low groan, the door slid open, revealing a chamber bathed in golden light. Inside lay artifacts unlike anything he'd ever seen. Devices pulsating with energy, crystals humming softly, and a pedestal bearing what appeared to be a control interface. The chamber was a kaleidoscope of light and sound, each artifact resonating with its own unique frequency. James approached the pedestal cautiously, his breath fogging the visor of his helmet despite the suit's climate control. The control interface glowed faintly, its surface etched with intricate patterns that shifted like liquid metal. He hesitated, his gloved hand hovering above it, acutely aware that activating it could trigger unforeseen consequences. Yet, the allure of discovery was irresistible. With a deep breath, he pressed his palm against the interface. Instantly, the room erupted into life. The artifacts began to hum in unison, their lights pulsing in a synchronized rhythm. The walls shimmered as though they were dissolving, revealing holographic projections of ancient beings engaged in what appeared to be a council meeting. Their forms were humanoid but elongated, with translucent skin that revealed intricate networks of glowing veins beneath. They spoke, or rather, communicated, in a language composed of harmonic tones, each note layered with meaning far beyond human comprehension. James activated his suit's recording system, capturing every detail for later analysis. As the holograms continued their deliberations, he noticed recurring motifs, images of celestial alignments, massive structures floating in space, and symbols that matched those carved into the dungeon walls. It was clear this civilization had achieved feats of engineering and science that dwarfed anything humanity had accomplished. But there was an undercurrent of tension in their interactions, a sense of urgency that suggested they were grappling with a grave threat. Suddenly, the holograms dissolved, replaced by a single figure standing at the center of the room. Unlike the others, this being radiated an aura of authority and sorrow. Its eyes locked onto James, though he knew logically it couldn't see him. Then, without warning, it extended a hand, pointing directly at him. A wave of energy surged through the chamber, knocking James off his feet. His vision blurred, and for a moment he thought he might lose consciousness. When he finally regained his footing, the figure was gone, leaving behind only silence and a lingering sense of unease. Touching the pedestal triggered another cascade of visions, this time showing fragments of battles fought between rival factions within the ancient civilization. Advanced weaponry clashed against nature itself, tearing apart ecosystems and destabilizing entire planets. The message was clear: their ambition led to extinction. Yet amidst the chaos, James glimpsed hope, a group attempting to preserve knowledge before the end. Were these relics remnants of their final efforts? If so, they held secrets capable of reshaping existence itself. But extracting them meant risking activation of dormant defenses, and possibly unleashing whatever force had annihilated their creators. James staggered out of the chamber, his mind reeling from the overload of information. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like never before. These artifacts weren't just tools. They were keys to understanding a race that had risen and fallen in a cycle eerily reminiscent of humanity's own trajectory. Could humanity truly handle such power responsibly? Or would greed and hubris lead to the same catastrophic outcome? Back at base camp, he convened an emergency meeting with Commander Alara and Dr. Chun. "We need to establish stricter protocols," he insisted, pacing the room as he recounted his experiences. "These artifacts are too dangerous to leave unchecked. We have no idea what kind of safeguards or traps they might contain." Alara nodded grimly, while Chun scribbled notes furiously, her brow furrowed in concentration. "But what about the potential benefits?" asked one of the engineers, voicing the question everyone else was thinking. "If we can harness even a fraction of their technology, it could revolutionize our colonies. Not just here, but across the galaxy." James clenched his fists, torn between duty and caution. "And if we screw up," he shot back, "we could destroy everything we've worked for. Is that worth the risk?" The room fell silent, the gravity of his words sinking in. For now, they agreed to proceed with extreme care, but James knew the debate was far from over. As James documented the findings, the environment grew increasingly hostile. Temperature fluctuations caused equipment failures, while ghostly apparitions haunted the corridors, always just out of reach. One night, while reviewing data logs, he caught movement in the corner of his eye. Whirling around, he came face to face with a translucent figure, an inhabitant of Xeros, preserved somehow beyond death. Though unable to speak, its gestures conveyed urgency. Pointing toward the exit, then back at the artifacts, it seemed to warn him. "Take them and doom will follow. Leave them and perhaps salvation remains possible." The weight of responsibility crushed him. What choice should he make? The figure lingered for several minutes, its presence both haunting and reassuring. James tried to communicate, raising his hands in a gesture of peace, but the entity simply shook its head and pointed again toward the exit. This message was clear: leave while you still can. James returned to the team visibly shaken. "We're not alone down there," he told them, recounting his encounter. "Whatever or whoever is left of that civilization doesn't want us messing with their stuff." Alara frowned, her voice firm. "Then maybe we should listen. We've already pushed our luck far enough." But not everyone agreed. Some argued that abandoning the mission now would mean squandering an opportunity that might never come again. Tensions flared, dividing the crew into factions. James found himself caught in the middle, burdened by the knowledge that the decision ultimately rested with him. In the climactic moment, James faced the ultimate decision. The colony awaited resources promised by this expedition. Failure meant abandoning countless lives dependent on success. Yet taking the artifacts risked repeating the mistakes of the past. Torn between duty and morality, he chose compromise. Using portable containment units, he secured select items deemed least dangerous, leaving others untouched. As he ascended toward the surface, the dungeon quaked violently, sealing itself off forever. Emerging into daylight, James realized the true cost of knowledge. Some answers must remain buried. The journey back to base was fraught with tension. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the planet itself disapproved of his actions. By the time he reached the ship, exhaustion had set in, both physical and emotional. The crew greeted him with a mixture of relief and apprehension, their eyes darting toward the containment units strapped to his back. "What did you bring back?" Alara asked, her tone cautious. "Enough to change everything," James replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "But not enough to destroy us." Reintegration proved challenging. Back aboard the colony ship, James presented his findings cautiously, omitting details likely to incite fear or greed. Initial analysis confirmed the artifacts possessed revolutionary potential, from sustainable energy sources to medical breakthroughs. However, strict protocols ensured limited access, prioritizing ethical considerations over exploitation. Meanwhile, whispers circulated among crew members about the mysteries left behind. Some argued returning for more was necessary. Others believed disturbing Xeros again invited catastrophe. James listened silently, knowing the truth rested solely with him. The containment units were secured in a specialized lab, accessible only to a select few scientists under James's direct supervision. Dr. Chun led the preliminary examinations, her excitement tempered by an underlying sense of unease. "These devices operate on principles we can barely comprehend," she explained during one briefing. "It's like they're alive, adapting to our attempts to study them." Her words sent a chill through the room, but there was no turning back now. The stakes were too high. As days turned into weeks, small victories began to emerge. A crystalline device yielded insights into quantum energy manipulation, potentially revolutionizing power generation. Another artifact hinted at medical applications capable of curing diseases previously thought incurable. Yet each breakthrough came with its own set of challenges. Equipment malfunctioned inexplicably, and some researchers reported vivid dreams that mirrored the visions James had experienced in the dungeon. It became clear that the artifacts weren't merely tools. They were fragments of a living legacy, carrying echoes of their creators' triumphs and tragedies. Months passed, and life aboard the colony settled into routine. Construction projects flourished using adapted technologies derived from the artifacts. Yet unease lingered. Strange occurrences persisted: malfunctioning drones, inexplicable illnesses among workers, dreams plagued by haunting melodies. James suspected residual effects from exposure to the dungeon. Consulting Dr. Chun, he learned prolonged interaction with alien tech could alter neural pathways, potentially explaining shared symptoms. Together, they devised countermeasures, hoping to mitigate long-term consequences. Still, questions remained unanswered. Had they truly contained the threat, or merely delayed inevitable repercussions? One evening, James found himself alone in the observation deck, staring out at the twin suns casting their crimson glow across the horizon. His mind replayed moments from the mission, the hum of the dungeon, the ghostly figure pointing toward the exit, the weight of his decision to take only a fraction of what lay beneath. He couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted, not just within him, but within the fabric of reality itself. Dr. Chun joined him unexpectedly, holding 2 steaming cups of synthetic coffee. "You look like you could use this," she said softly, handing him one. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars twinkle against the darkening sky. Finally, she spoke. "Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing?" James sighed, rubbing his temples. "Every day. But I don't think right is the question anymore. We made a choice, and now we have to live with it." Her gaze lingered on him, sharp and penetrating. "And if it turns out we made the wrong one?" He didn't answer immediately, instead taking a slow sip of his coffee. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with resolve. "Then we'll deal with the consequences. Together." Word reached Earth of the expedition's success, sparking debates across scientific communities. While some hailed James as a hero, others condemned his actions, labeling them reckless endangerment. Media coverage painted conflicting narratives, amplifying public fascination with Xeros. Amidst controversy, funding poured in for future missions, raising concerns about unchecked expansion. James wrestled with guilt, wondering whether sharing discoveries justified the risks involved. Late nights found him staring at star maps, tracing routes back to Xeros, contemplating unfinished business lingering below its surface. The influx of resources and personnel brought both blessings and curses. New arrivals brought fresh perspectives and skills, accelerating progress on adapting the artifact's technology. But they also introduced dissenting voices, some advocating for a return to the dungeon to retrieve more artifacts. "We've barely scratched the surface," one young engineer exclaimed during a heated meeting. "Think of all the knowledge we're leaving behind." James slammed his fist on the table, silencing the room. "And think of the cost," he snapped. "We barely survived the last trip. Do you really want to risk unleashing whatever destroyed that civilization?" The argument ended inconclusively, leaving tensions simmering beneath the surface. James retreated to his quarters, where he spent hours poring over data logs and holographic recordings from the mission. Each image, each sound, seemed to carry a hidden message, one he feared he'd never fully understand. Years later, standing on the observation deck of a new colony vessel preparing for launch, James reflected on lessons learned. Humanity's thirst for progress often blinded judgment, leading to shortcuts fraught with peril. Yet abandoning curiosity altogether stifled growth. Striking balance required wisdom and humility. As engines roared to life, propelling them toward distant horizons, James vowed vigilance. Exploring unknown realms demanded respect for boundaries set by those who came before. Perhaps someday, humanity would earn the right to inherit such legacies without repeating tragedies. The colony had grown into a thriving settlement, its skyline dotted with structures blending human ingenuity with Xerosian design. Schools taught children about the importance of responsible exploration, emphasizing the need to learn from history rather than repeat it. James took pride in these developments, though he remained haunted by the sacrifices made along the way. On the eve of the new mission's departure, he addressed the crew gathered in the hangar bay. "This journey won't be easy," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "But remember this, every step we take must honor those who walked before us. Let's not conquer, let's coexist." Applause erupted, echoing off the metal walls, but James felt a pang of uncertainty. Was humanity ready for the responsibility that lay ahead? Only time would tell. Legacy defined James's journey, not merely personal achievement, but collective responsibility. Returning periodically to oversee developments on Xeros, he witnessed gradual transformations. Settlements thrived responsibly, guided by principles forged during trials endured. Artifacts yielded innovations revolutionized industries while safeguarding ecological integrity. Most importantly, reverence replaced recklessness. Future generations inherited not just tools, but teachings ensuring sustainable coexistence. Watching children play beneath twin suns, James felt peace. Through sacrifice and struggle, they carved a path forward, one honoring both past and future. As he stood on a hill overlooking the colony, James allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The road had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had led to something extraordinary, a fragile yet hopeful equilibrium between ambition and restraint. Behind him, laughter rang out as a group of children chased after a glowing drone, its light casting playful shadows on the ground. James smiled faintly, turning his gaze toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond the crimson skies, hidden beneath layers of rock and time, the dungeon waited patiently. Its secrets remained locked away, a testament to the wisdom of restraint. And perhaps James thought that was the greatest discovery of all. If you enjoyed this thrilling tale of exploration and moral dilemmas, don't forget to subscribe for more captivating stories from the cosmos.